Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We wanted to wait till right on time because we wanted to let the room heat up just a little bit before we got going. So, welcome to today's session. It's professional learning, your secret weapon to maximizing ROI. So, as you guys know, these pre-conference seminars are an opportunity for our vendors to team up with districts that are actually using their products and talk a little bit how it works in real life. Because one thing to see it on the internet or hear a sales presentation, but when you hear from folks that are actually using the product, it's a whole different message. So today from Hapara, we have Allison Winston, and we have a great panel here from 3 different districts. That includes Shelby Reynolds from North Shore. We have from Battleground, Scott McDaniels, and last but not least, Michelle Lewis from Sumner. So I'm going to turn it over to Allison to get things kicked off here.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, how many of you are existing Hapara users? Okay, a few of you. And how many of you are responsible for staffing the professional development on your edtech initiatives or organizing it? Okay. So today we're going to be talking about some best practices in professional learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about Hapara at the beginning of our session, and then we are going to move into some share-outs by our panel. Then we'll move into some kind of structured Q&A and or can you not hear me? Okay. Then we'll move into some structured Q&A, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask the panel questions. At the end of the session, I'm happy to answer additional questions about Hapara. The sales rep for the Pacific Northwest, his name's Brian Handy. He's not in the room, but he'll be coming in a few minutes, so I'll make sure to point him out so that you can speak with him if you're interested in learning more. So the purpose of today's session is not to do a demo, it's to talk about best practices with implementation. And our friends here are going to be using some Hapara examples, right? But your focus is more on meaningful edtech implementation, meaningful professional learning to get your return on investment. Okay, so a little bit about me before we get started. I've been with Hapara for about 2 years, and prior to taking on my current role as the Director of Professional Learning, I was actually a classroom teacher for 10 years. So I did higher ed, I taught at UC San Diego and San Jose State, and I also taught 7th, 8th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade English at a few different private and public schools throughout the U.S. So currently, I work with about 45,000 educators worldwide. Hapara is in 30 countries, in every single state in the U.S., and I work with all of our districts as they are implementing Hapara and organizing professional learning initiatives so that Hapara will be impactful. And, of course, you've already met our friends here today. I'm going to share this slide deck with you, so if you happen to have your device or you want to plug the short link in, you'll be able to access it. It will serve as a resource for you after the session if you choose to use it. We've got contact information here as well. And Scott, Shelby, and Michelle are happy to answer additional questions today and in the future about Hapara initiatives or professional learning or anything else. So again, like I said, we're going to talk about Hapara first, then we're going to have our panelists share out, then we'll have some panel questions and open Q&A. Here's our presentation link. We've also got a back channel document. It seems like most people don't have devices in the room, which is actually pretty awesome. So if you choose to go in there in the back channel document, I've actually put together a place where you can organize some thoughts, ask some questions, and I'll be checking that. We have a small enough group today that you can also just raise your hands and ask questions. But if you'd like to use this, we can certainly do that. The presentation link is here. Feel free to use and redistribute in the future as you see fit, or as will be helpful for you. Okay. So Hapara is actually a Maori word for daybreak, and we originated in New Zealand in a school district called Manaiakalani Cluster. Have you ever heard of Manaiakalani? Anybody? A few of you? Really, really famous school district in New Zealand. It's kind of equivalent to what a Title I district would be here in the U.S. They have an 80% Maori and Pacifica population, so that means that they have 80% of students who are not English, native English speakers, and they've had a lot of challenges around, access and equity. In 2008, they were doing some really amazing things in the classroom at Manaiakalani. They actually had adopted John Hattie's best practices in visible learning. Anyone familiar with John Hattie? Okay, excellent. So John Hattie has done some amazing meta-studies, and essentially he's trying to answer the question, what instructional practices impact student learning most? Because if we can get those practices, we can then say, hey teachers, we know that this will be impactful, please adopt in your classrooms. So Manaya Kalani had adopted these 10 best practices and others. These include things like differentiated instruction, formative assessment, real-time feedback, things like that. So they had already adopted all of this without technology. This is all pre-tech. And they were working around the clock in order to be impactful. The teachers were amazing, but they were getting burnt out. And they had a lot of turnover at this district because the teachers could not sustain this workload. So they actually looked to the emerging field of edtech as a way to streamline and scale the best practices they'd already implemented in the classroom. They worked with our founder, Jan, to create Hapara Dashboard, which was the original Hapara product that many of you might be familiar with. And the whole point of this product was to actually take these best practices and put them into a tool that made it easier for teachers to do those things in class. So the point was very intentional. We know what impacts students. We're going to build a technology to scale and streamline those practices. And those practices specifically with Hapara are any kind of instruction around learner agency, anything that makes learning visible, whether it's through the Chrome browser or through Google Docs, formative assessment, so the ability to quickly get into student work and give them feedback, and collaboration and relationships both between teachers, staff, and students, and differentiated instruction. This is very, very important for us. The ability to create different learning experiences for different students depending on their needs. So Hapara was created to accelerate these best practices. And the whole concept is teach better using technology. You can kind of help teachers find different entry points to doing more transformational teaching by using these tools. So everything that we've done is designed around that. And Hapara Professional Learning, which is the program that I oversee, we help kind of bridge that gap. Because what we find when people adopt Hapara, their teachers aren't necessarily ready to start maximizing it. They're not necessarily ready to start implementing those practices. So Hapara Professional Learning helps to bridge the gap. Now, what's interesting about these folks is they have the infrastructure, right, to kind of start doing a lot of this work on your own in your district. But we've worked pretty closely together for the last 2 years to try to make sure that we're bridging that gap mindfully. So there's a couple cool things about what we do in Hapara Professional Learning. One that I'm pretty excited about is we go beyond tools training. So we're not doing the kind of sit and get cafeteria PD. Instead, we're trying to differentiate. We're trying to make PD really hands-on, really experiential for teachers. We're making it reflective and iterative and all these cool things. And we have this awesome program that is my baby called the Hapara Certified Educator Program. And one of Scott's teachers, 2 of Michelle's teachers, I think 1 currently, right, is in the program. And it's really amazing because it's a 3-month cohort, and they build not just a relationship with other Hapara users around the world, but they build expertise that they can then redeliver within the district. So now you have 2 experts that are, not just Hapara tools experts, but they're experts in these pedagogies that we support. So that's pretty amazing, and of course, I'm particularly excited about it because I built this program from the ground up. So as we were preparing for this session, we said we think that there are some key edtech integration challenges that a lot of our districts face. I work with a lot of districts and they kind of are telling me the same problems over and over and over again. And after doing some research, we came up with 6 key challenges to meaningful edtech adoption that we're seeing are really, really common. So a lot of our kind of talking points today are going to echo back to these, but essentially, not sure why these, oh, here we go. We've got 6. One of them, I think this is really important and will become increasingly important, but being able to provide evidence that your edtech initiative has been impactful. So school boards are increasingly coming to tech leadership and district admins and saying, can you provide evidence that this one-to-one implementation actually did shift the needle around learning? Are our students doing better? Are they getting into college? What metrics are you using? This is a challenge. Hapara is working on some analytics that hopefully will help make it easier to answer those questions. But also using tech meaningfully. We see a lot of people, a lot of teachers, not really moving up the SAMR scale, even after 1, 2, 3 years using technology. So how do we get them to start really meaningfully adopting and using in class? How do we get all of your teachers to start teaching like the top 15%? Another one we hear a lot is it's just one more thing, right? We're still hearing this from a lot of teachers. Oh, that initiative, it's just one more thing on my plate. They don't see tech necessarily as making their lives easier. They sometimes often see it as making their lives more difficult. So trying to get around that perception and that blocker. Another one we're seeing come up more and more is parents questioning the amount of screen time that students are spending. At school, they see that students are on the devices a lot, then they come home and they're on the devices more. So, how do we kind of navigate that? How do we have conversations to help redirect? Or how do we make adjustments to our practice? That was cute. Whoops, I lost my slide. And then, of course, student misuse is a big part. We've got a lot of products out there on the market. Hapara starts to help get out at this issue, but we're not focused on monitoring. We're not focused on student misuse of devices, but this is definitely a problem a lot of districts have. We've got kids that are looking at websites they shouldn't look at, right? We've got misuse of devices and of the internet. And then finally, the challenge of getting teachers into PD. So how many of you have done a survey to ask teachers, do you want PD on X, Y, or Z? And 80% of them say yeah, and then you hold the PD and not 80% of them show up, right? This happens constantly. It happens to us. It happens to all of our partner schools. So, how do we get around that? Is the answer doing online web-based learning? Is the answer badging? Is it flipping PD, right? We have a lot of different possible answers that we're going to be presenting today. Okay, so here we go. Scott.
All right. Scott McDaniel, Director of Technology for Battleground Public Schools. Do I really need to wear that? I probably do need to wear it. I've been in education for 20 years. Prior to that, I worked for Hewlett-Packard. And my first few years in education was a classroom teacher. I taught history, language arts, science, computers, wetland restoration, and every single other thing under the sun. So anybody that's been a first-year teacher, you've probably taught the same things. So 20 years in education. I've been in Battleground for 16 years now. And if you're not familiar with Battleground, we make everybody else feel really good about funding. Thank you for laughing. I'm also very desperate for people's approval, so laughing does help me. Oh, you guys this is amazing. I never get this in my district. So, thanks. They're so nice. They've been very supportive about this, or tolerant, really. So, thank you. It's great. And again, I put this in just for attention. That was me last year. Clearly, it's been a rough year. God, this is great. I'm just going to eat this up. So, I love baseball. There will be baseball analogies. I'm just going to say it. They're going to be there. So if you don't like baseball, just kind of work your way through it and sort of try and glean it out. Yeah, this is a picture out of Moneyball. I'm hoping not to make this one of those Moneyball corporate improvement sort of talks, but there's a lot in that movie going on in very short snippets. And if you pick it out, it's pretty powerful. I'm not an A's fan, so that's not it. I'm a Yankees fan. I don't have a Yankees budget. I have an A's budget. I'm sure there's other great clubs out there, and they're really great farm teams. Don't get me started. This is amazing. You guys must have hit that open bar. Thanks. Sorry, Allison. I also do that. So, I mean, there's some great things about being poor, and we're not anymore. We really are in a great position now. We're not rich, but we didn't have anything before, so that actually has been a huge benefit to us. And so what we have had to do is we've had to adapt or we die. And that's a critical piece of what's going on in that movie, is we've had to move quickly, and we've had to move quickly with little. And so we've had to manufacture every little success we get. So you take that into baseball. We're manufacturing runs with bunts, stealing bases, sacrifices, all these things to get those runs and accumulate things, and doing it with resources that are undervalued by other people. Okay, so that's probably the biggest thing that we had to face. We had to do those small things and do them well. So when we talk about PD, our PD effort was all grassroots. We had no funding. I had to bring people together and try and manufacture success out of this. To do that, the very first thing I did, and this predates having any budget, is we decided to kick over to Google. And we just started doing it real small. We had no ability to do those all-in-one trainings where every single person in the district got Google trained immediately, where you asked them, do you want to learn about Google? And 80% said yes, and they all showed up. Okay. Like Allison said, yeah, it wasn't a good laugh. We had to start with that small level, and we scraped and we fought to get these teachers computers. What we did, we brought 24 teachers together, K-12, and we sat them in a room and talked to them about what we wanted out of them. We picked teachers very intentionally. I didn't choose anybody that was a techie. I avoided them because I was hoping to get some success off the idea that anybody can do these things. And none of what I'm saying is rocket science. You all know it. But it needs to be said, because then they have money and they get to talk about their stuff. But we brought them together and said, we want to change education. We want to change the classroom. Are you willing to change your teaching and your classroom and do something interesting? And the response was ridiculously enthusiastic. We brought them together. We kept on that mission. We kept the story going. We didn't give up. We tweaked it as we needed to. We tried to move briskly. We made changes. And that's the benefit of a grassroots movement. Within 6 months of this program, we brought these people together 6 days in that 6 months and kept them coming. Word spread. The grassroots spread. We had people saying, are you going to do this next year? Yeah. If you build it, they will come. There's another baseball analogy for you. That didn't work either. So they came. When we did it a second year, they started going, is this going to keep going? And then the third year happened. And then they started going, oh, okay, I'm all in on this. And we've had huge success off of this kind of like small ball kind of thing, these manufactured runs. And so that was a strength for us. Oh, I didn't go far enough. We've done other things. We've done the boot camps, and these fall into some of those tool trainings at times, and we shift away from that as fast as we can in the training. Look to your elbow buddy. The primary teachers love that. Talk to your neighbor. Ask questions. Look it up. Let's teach you how to do these things, but we still have to show them some things. So the boot camps, these are the self-identified laggards. I'll talk about that in a minute. Our academy, in the last 2 years, we've had enough money to give a little bit of money to teachers to do trainings in their classrooms. And so these have been the minions, we call them. They're the ones that can go out and hit people really quickly with the just-in-time training. It's not enough money. It's not enough time. We have challenges still with it. These drop-in days, this was one of the quick changes our academy came up with, that it wasn't always easy for our teachers that were trying to learn to be welcoming of somebody that is the guru, whatever, to come into their classroom and watch them do something. And it scared them. And so we flipped it around and said, you come into our room, okay? We're going to be doing this all day, or you drop in any day, and we'll show you what we're doing. We'll model it. You can see it. You can see what it looks like to do it right. And it's been a lot more successful for us. But, again, there's still challenges. the challenges, again, getting people actually to move out of their own classroom. They've got assessment, they've got these standards, they've got TPEP, they've got evidence and artifacts and all these things that they have to do. And then with that grassroots move, administrative support isn't necessarily there, or it's there based on the strength of that administrator in the building. And so getting that kind of buy-in when they have all the challenges on top of them has been difficult. The one more thing, I tried to flip that around a little bit and make it that one thing. And you all know these things. It's that one thing that hooks them. Anything that hooks them. I'll take any little success I can. Is it just you knowing how to deal with this kind of situation? Is it that idea of what do I do when a kid screws off so much, but I really need them to be able to work online? And you give them an idea, you brainstorm it with them, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not so scared of that anymore. The 5-minute thing. Talk to me for 5 minutes. I've got this one thing to show you. It's that communication from our academy, from our education technology coordinator, from me, from the neighbors, of the short pieces, the short snippets that get you far. The capturing of laggards. If you're not familiar with this, there's a technology adoption cycle, and it's my favorite thing to show when I talk about technology integration, and mainly it's because of the terminology, I think. But the shift from who starts off with technology and how it moves through the bell curve of your population, with the laggards being the last one. That's my favorite term. These are the folks that I'm retiring next year, or I'm retiring this year, I don't really have to learn this, or I'm retiring in 10 years and I can outweight you. You know them. You know them. I'm not going to name the types of teachers they are. But your innovators and your early adopters. And this graphic, it comes from Hapara, and I like it better than the normal one, which doesn't include that chasm. It doesn't include that. Okay? It's just a simple, very, very clean model. But what we found with this cohort model, these Google cohorts, the passion, the excitement, go figure, it's the best dang thing I've ever done. We shifted pretty quickly through that and into that early majority. We're hanging on the last part. I mean, we are hanging on that last part, trying to get those folks. And they are outweighting you. They're saying, I'm retiring at the end of the year. Are you really going to switch away from Outlook? Do we really have to use Gmail? Yeah, you do. It's coming. Next year they'll believe me when it doesn't work anymore. But the challenge for us at this point is the speed at which technology changes. And so this is like a newer interpretation of that technology adoption cycle, and it applies mostly to new inventions in the marketplace. But what you're seeing now is this shortening of time frame. And we're school districts. We can't move really fast. We don't have the money, we don't have the speed, we don't have the time. Teachers are busy, and we have them 180 days out of the year, and that's it. So the struggle with it is these things are changing before we even get to that second half of people. And they're shifting and they're moving quickly. When I first started with any mobile technology, the iPad was the game. That was it. If you're going to do something mobile and you moved away from laptops, MacBooks, Windows, I don't care. You moved past them. The only thing that existed was an iPad. There was this thing called a Chromebook, but nobody really took those seriously. Till now. 2 years later, the game's different. What's 2 years from now going to be like, and how are we going to move faster to keep up with it or to even stay relevant? If we'd gone one-to-one with iPads, we couldn't sustain it. I know I need to move quicker. The use and misuse. You all see this too, where the teachers, there is complaints about screen time. We have it now. We've had it a few times. We've figured out where those things come from, and it's not always just screen time. It's a not understanding what's actually occurring in the classroom. The successes with these things, the student engagement, the parents are seeing what the kids are doing in the class, and this carries us past the question of screen time. If your kids are just typing all day, every day, your parents are going to kill you. If your kids are doing really meaningful things, they're collaborating with mom and dad and with their neighbors, then that's what's going to carry it. And the good examples have to far outweigh the bad. Unfortunately, we have the bad. I want a classroom set of Chromebooks so I can have stations for MobiMax all day. That's a problem. That's the thing to kill. That's the thing to beat down. And then the challenge or the success is that need for an analog world. I wasn't really sure where to put that, because in some of our schools, that is the response for you misbehave on technology, you go analog. Or worse, you work on one of the desktop computers in the back of the room that's 8 years old. Nobody wants that. Every kid wants back on the Chromebook. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over because I'm sure I went over time. Sorry. You can talk really quick, like a haiku.
Okay. My name is Michelle Lewis, and I have about 20 years of experience in education. However, I am relatively new to the Sumner School District. I've been there about a year. And in my role, I work mainly in two areas, in instructional technology and also in professional learning. We made a strategic decision about a year ago to move instructional technology into instructional services, to better integrate and to move towards better integration of technology throughout central office and our schools. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you today was a problem of practice that we've been working on over this past year, which is how we support both the collective and personalized learning needs of all staff in Sumner School District. And so to illustrate this point, I want to tell you a little about two teachers who I'll call Tracy and Felicia. So first of all, what you should know about these two gals is that they are both outstanding educators. They are the kind of teachers that we all want for our kids. And people go to great lengths to get their kids into these two teachers' classrooms. In fact, it's now getting to be the time of year where we're doing student assignments, and there are a few Starbucks cards in the principal's box with a little note requesting that a student be placed in one of these teachers' classrooms recently.
Yes, I've done it.
Does it work?
I don't know. I would have done it.
It's amazing what a little coffee will do. So first of all, we have Tracy. Tracy is a mid-career teacher. She has 17 years of experience. And going back to the slide that Scott showed in terms of technology adoption, she's probably in the late majority. She is a middle school teacher, and she teaches English language arts. And she views her PLC as the other 6th grade language arts teacher in her building, and the 4 other English language arts teachers in her building, and maybe her co-teacher, special education teacher that comes in and teaches with her for part of the day. And they meet together on an ongoing basis and work together to create lesson plans, including lesson plans that infuse technology. When Tracy prefers face-to-face professional learning opportunities, and she frequently asks our building instructional technology coordinator, which is somebody who is a full-time teacher but gets a small stipend to be able to provide a little bit of coaching and some after-school support to teachers. And so she's a frequent flyer when it comes to support from her ITC. And the ITC comes to our classroom, and she'll ask about how to use some particular tool to infuse it in her lesson. And she will write down all of the steps in her hot pink moleskin journal. And so Aaron goes through, and he says, okay, here's what you do. And she writes them all down, and then he watches her, and she goes back, and she looks at her notes, and then a few days later, she'll often connect with him again, and she's ready for the next step. That face-to-face learning is really important to her, and she really wants to have that constant guide on the side. Now, Felicia, on the other hand, is a newer teacher. She's taught for 3 years. This was her first year in Sumner School District. She's a digital native. When she was in college, she took several online classes, and she's really used to learning online. She's a CTE teacher at a high school, and she is the only business and marketing teacher in her high school. However, she views herself as a member of a very huge PLC. Her professional learning network includes people that she connects with on SatChat every Saturday morning. She's part of a Voxer group of other business and marketing teachers, and they have ongoing conversations about things that are specific to DECA and business and marketing. And she also participates in some other online forums. She has a blog, so she's constantly reflecting on her own teaching through her blog, and people comment on her blog. She's a great hire for our district. So one of the ways that Tracy tracks her thinking is through her Twitter feed. Now, the idea of going to a whole class professional learning session for Felicia is really painful. She would never do it. And when she has to do it, she's not very happy. She's usually doing something else. Well, the rest of the people are, some of the people are working on whatever the task at hand is, because she's already figured it out, or she's 15 steps ahead of the instructor. So she doesn't want the guide on the side. She wants to be the explorer. Her preferred method of learning new tools is self-paced. And often when she identifies the need, she goes out and she investigates what technology solution is going to best fit her need. A lot of her learning is done through informal structures rather than formal structures. So our system in Sumner needs to address the needs of teachers all along the continuum, from the Tracys to the Felicias. So that's why we've created a system where we have common outcomes but multiple entry points. So an example is we're currently rolling out Hapara across our district, and so we are trying to, of course, encourage all of our teachers to differentiate their instruction. So teachers like Felicia have taken our online course on differentiating and creating tiered lessons with Hapara, which is all self-paced, and she can create and embellish and go as quickly as she likes. Tracy signed up to take our face-to-face session, and they both have the opportunity to work, if needed, with their building instructional technology coordinator. So one thing that's we're finding is really important is that teachers have the ability to participate in professional learning that provides them with autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And really that job-embedded professional learning helps them get to that point. That's where they're really able to personalize, where they're able to take it and apply whatever they're learning about the tech tool to their own practice. So many times our ITCs are working with our teachers on either planning lessons to utilize some tech tool, or they are doing a demonstration lesson where they're planning alongside the teacher but actually teaching the class and the teacher is watching the demonstration lesson. We've gotten a lot of mileage out of that this year, and I would say if there was one structure that's probably changed people's understanding and their ability to infuse technology throughout their classroom, the fastest has been through these demonstration lessons. So they're able to see how the technology is used in their own context. So our current challenge, and one thing that we're really trying to figure out and get smart around, is this idea about how we create systems and structures that promote and recognize both informal structures, like Felicia likes, and the formal professional learning experiences that lead to real changes in classroom practice and real improvements in student learning. So currently our structure recognizes seat time rather than competency. So we're really intrigued with this idea of micro-credentialing, where people have the opportunity to learn something, apply it, and get credit when they can show not just when they implemented it, but evidence of student learning around it and student reflections. So we're really impressed with some of the tools from Cohort and Digital Promise, and are considering how we might utilize that structure moving forward. But in order for that to take place, some things in our system have to change. So right now, we recognize, like you said, seat time and clock hours based on seat time and completion of things. Our contract with our Teachers Association really rewards time. So it causes us to really rethink how we might structure some of those policies and some of our procedures to really maximize learning. And we're also really thinking about, how we, especially the central office level, work with our principals to monitor changes in classroom practice, to identify the specific root that we would be hoping to see based on the learning that teachers are participating in, and what student outcomes they should be looking at that would be evidence of change. So with that, I will turn things over to Shelby.
I'm Shelby Reynolds. I manage the Instructional Technology and Library School District. We are about 20,000 students, and we encompass 2 counties and 3 states. Excuse me, 3 cities, not 3 states. That would be a really big district and really sparsely populated. So 3 cities and 2 counties. We have an instructional tech team of 4 tech coordinators that work within our pathways, and we also have we call them technology resource teachers. They're stipended, much like Michelle was describing, and we have a certain number at each school depending on the size of the school. One challenge that these guys have kind of alluded to, and that was on an earlier slide that we face, and I'm sure all of you face, is getting folks in the room. So Allison's example of ask teachers what they want, and they tell you, and then you put a lot of effort into designing something that's very specific and relevant, and then nobody shows up, and it's super frustrating. I think everybody in this room can attest to the fact that that's an issue, certainly. And there's a number of challenges that underlie that in North Shore, which I'm sure also are true for folks in this room. One of those challenges is certainly time and place. So we know the best practice is just-in-time training. We know that teachers really want that in the moment, like I need it right now, quick little snippet of just what they need. But how do you deliver that with 4 people for 32 schools, or a program that has stipended full-time teachers whose extra money is supposed to be for them to go in and provide that just-in-time training, but they're full-time teachers, so they're not going to leave second period to go help Woody next door. So that's certainly a struggle. How do you deliver that best practice? Certainly having good people to offer the training, having good coaches in place, despite the fact that we have these stipended TRTs. We don't hire them. We don't get to pick who they are, right? They're chosen by their peers, and hopefully in most cases those are folks that are well qualified, but sometimes you get stipend payments, right? You get the folks that are trying to pad retirement, or they've just always been a TRT, so I'm just going to continue to be a TRT. And this is a program that in North Shore has been around since the mid-90s, and technology is a little different now than it was in the mid-90s. A TRT back then was somebody who would help you set up your printer, or get you another roll of transparency for your overhead projector, right? I mean, that was kind of the role back then. When you think about the proliferation of online resources and, Hapara, and just-in-time training now has a very different meaning than it did back then. So getting the right people in the right places is a real challenge. Time is certainly a challenge. Teachers, a lot of teachers are bound by contract time. I don't want to spend any minute past my contracted day, even though they might believe in the value and the worth of that time. So that's certainly a challenge. And then this slide speaks to overwhelm. Teachers are completely overwhelmed. I'm sure North Shore is not the only district that has, an ongoing curriculum refresh cycle, and elementary teachers who teach all subjects every year are, facing new curriculum and new assessments and new requests from the state and from the district, and it's really challenging. So to get them past the overwhelm enough to see the value in spending some time growing their instructional technology practices, that's a hard sell. It's a real hard sell. In North Shore, for some reason I'm not sure I can explain, we decided to redraw our boundaries, do grade reconfiguration, so move from junior high to middle school, and also review the high school start times. And we're doing all of those things kicking off fall of 2017, all at the same time. So we've got teachers that are panicked about things like, boy, this year I better move from 6th grade to 4th grade because I don't want to be that person who gets moved up to middle school because I'm not ready for that, right? So you talk to a person like that about the importance of learning how to do a Google slideshow, and it's not, it doesn't resonate, right? So overwhelm is definitely something about it. So some things that we've been trying to do in North Shore to meet them where they are is first to pay them. We have used a significant chunk of the last 2 capital levies that we've run to add salary to teachers. And we've put that under the umbrella of what we call professional development hours, or tech professional development hours. So teachers in North Shore are paid an extra 4 days of salary to improve their teaching through the use of technology. And that takes a whole bunch of different forms. We have district tech days where we pull everyone at a particular level together and give them relatively the same content. We also allow independent study. If they come to a workshop, much like some of the, one of the teachers that Michelle was talking about, if they come to a sit and soak, like inoculation training, that counts, right? If they partner with another teacher to develop lessons after school, that counts. So, all kinds of options for them. We've also tried to grow in the last couple of years our online courses. And again, we try to motivate folks through the offering of these online courses for way more clock hours than a normal sit and soak. And clock hours are so important to teachers, right? Because it moves them along the salary schedule. So we've started a model where we've got an online course that's 10 clock hours, and they only meet face-to-face twice, once at the beginning to get oriented to the class, and once at the end to sign off on paperwork and kind of reflect on the session. And everything else in between is asynchronous, so they can use that jammy time at home, or the coffee time on a Saturday morning, or whatever, to catch up and learn and use the time to the best of their advantage. We also subscribe to Atomic Learning, and we're seeing steady growth year over year with the use of that service. I would say the biggest benefit for us in that tool is we've also subscribed to the custom content module. So everything that we build that supports that independent study that's specific to something in North Shore, if it's video-based, we throw it up in Atomic Learning and advertise it to folks there, which is really great. So any new system that comes along, or a change in practice, or a change in interface, we make a quick little screencast and throw it up there. We can prescribe trainings for folks too, and that's been super helpful. We give them time. We went to a schedule a couple of years ago that allows for an early release every Wednesday afternoon. And although they couldn't necessarily use their levy-funded tech hours to do something during that time, we've opened that time up where they can work together in a grade level team or with a curriculum team, or invite an instructional tech coordinator to come in and sit with them in a PLC, and they can have an ongoing, meaningful relationship with those folks. So that's been super helpful. And our district tech days are part of that too. So those are the days where we bring all folks at a particular level together to receive very similar content. And this is how we rolled out Hapara and Google Apps to both our elementary and secondary folks. And although it was kind of a vanilla, everyone gets the same flavor of training, I think it did a nice job of setting the tone and calibrating everybody's understanding of how to use this tool, so that nobody could really say, oh, you're using that and I'm not, so I don't need to engage with you in a conversation about that. It's sort of level thing. So that was really helpful. And then lastly, I would just say we aim for the target. Sometimes we even hit it, which is really great. And what I mean by that is we try to develop professional development opportunities that are super relevant and timely. And that might mean partnering with our friends in our instructional services group, or partnering with a TOSA or a principal or a group of teachers, and really trying to be specific. Not just, hey, here's this latest neat thing, and I'm going to give you a 3-hour course on it, but what's important to those teachers. So as we roll out curriculum, how can we, and I call it putting the cauliflower in your mac and cheese. Any parent ever done that, where you're grind cauliflower really tiny and put it in the mac and cheese? You get the vegetables in, right? We try to do that with our curriculum folks. Where can we model really good use of technology? Where can we kind of sneak that cauliflower in so the teachers are getting that experience without feeling like, oh my God, it's technology, or oh my God, it's Cohort. Some successes, I would say, with our tech days in particular, it's nice to be able to say every teacher has received a core set of skills or training or whatever, so that as we move forward in professional development, we can count on people having had that experience, rather than trying to deliver professional development to that wide range that the laggards and the early adopters and all of those folks who are doing district tech days. I think we've done a decent job of trying to shrink that continuum a little bit. It's become a little easier. I'd say that we're pretty good at being flexible in terms of listening for what people need and trying to design and deliver on that. It's hard though with 4 people for 1,200 teachers. That's tricky. So inflexibility also means that we need to we continuously grow our leaders within schools to help them carry the torch as well. And we've been able to come up with a variety of ways to meet people's needs, which I think is really exciting. And technology lets us do that, right? There's so many great ways that we can deliver professional learning experiences to teachers without sitting in front of them. There are the Teresa's, or whatever her name was, who need that, and that's fine. And so we hire personable people to make that happen, but we also like to have variety for folks that need it. Challenges, there are at times varying understandings of how people should be using those professional development days and hours. So, we'll get people at the end of the year like, oh, I'm just going to count these 4 days as I did email. That's technology, right? And other people who've totally gone above and beyond and done some great things. So there's a lot of variability in people's interpretations of how to use those hours. And then there's also this kind of board mentality, and what I mean by that is there was one year where we used District Tech Day differently for elementary and secondary, and it came to the bargaining table later. We had elementary teachers saying, well, secondary got blah, 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 and we didn't get blah, blah, blah. So there was this assumption that if them, then us, which was not the intent. It's not differentiation, right? So that's a challenge. And I would say for next steps, definitely we need to be thinking about how effective all of these different methods that we have are in terms of helping teachers grow in their practice. Right now we rely a lot on anecdotal and observable kinds of evidence. We don't do a study necessarily. That takes time. That takes somebody writing the right questions and asking the right people, and we just haven't found a way to do that successfully yet or effectively, so that'll be something for us to be thinking about. And then we're going to continue to be agile. We're going to continue to go back and review and think about and reflect on and change as we go. And one of the big ways that we're going to be working on that is in planning for our next bond and levy cycle. The conversations are heightened now about how we spend those dollars, and in particular in that little green section there, part of the ecosystem of technology in North Shore is to think about how we provide professional learning experiences. And right now we're actually in the midst of some conversations about how do we maximize the dollars that we collect in this precious levy to make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck. And it's not going to be stipends for stipend fees, and it's not going to be sit and soak trainings for all. It's going to be something flexible and something that's got people involved that are trained and qualified and excited and can kind of carry that passion forward. So I think that's the end of my.
So we have some pre-structured questions, but I want to kind of hold those for a second and see what questions you have for either me or for our panel.
In terms of the panel questions, when I read through them, it looks like there's a lot of valuable questions in there for each of the panelists. And obviously, we don't have the time there. One thing I wondered is the infinite amount of spare time that you have, especially at ACPEnw. One thought was is if you could perhaps reflect on those within the slides.
I already wrote mine up because that's how
Perfect. That's great. So, no, it's I don't know whether it's during ACPEnw or in the week after we could come back to this to see those because I see a lot of value.
I think one of the pieces I wanted to also add about how do we, one of the questions was, but it was how do we identify whether or not our professional learning interventions have been impactful. And one really low-tech way to do that I do with my PL and that a lot of my partners do is to do pre and post assessment data, right? You send out a survey before you do your intervention. You ask them about their comfort level with certain instructional practices and certain tech practices. You send out another survey directly after the session, asking the same questions, but asking them the extent to which they feel the session will help them with executing. And then the key is a couple months later to send them another survey that asks them to provide an example. And that's where you're actually asking for an artifact, something that happened in the classroom. It's like one great thing. What's one great thing that happened in the last 3 months? You can have them create a collaborative slide deck with cool pictures of kids and videos, and now you have a bunch of evidence to take back to whomever it is that's auditing you. And you're not paying another subscription for another piece of SaaS software to identify the effectiveness of your other SaaS software. So other ideas, but I'll move it to that slide too.
Evaluating the impact of professional learning interventions, we can collect subjective data, and that's valuable. It has a place for us. And data on how wonderfully technology improves instruction is great, or would be great if there was a really great amount of it. But trust the word of people. Look at the passion of people. Watch them. Hear the stories they tell you, and listen to those successes. And like she said, have some little bit of accountability when you do these trainings. The passion when they leave the room. They're gonna say, that was by far the best thing I've ever done. And they're jazzed to come back, even if it's not even assessed.
I was thinking about how I would answer these questions before the session started, and the common theme for me in everything I would respond with is listen. When I think about the role of, as a leader, how do I get folks on board with an initiative, or how do I help folks buy into the importance of improving their practice, or how do I evaluate things? It's so important as a leader to listen to what the people are saying, so to speak. If we don't initiate programs and supports and frameworks and piles of devices or whatever, if we don't listen to what people need before we make decisions about those things, then the chance of success is not even worth it. It's not even worth asking the question. We've all been in situations where we've thought, oh, this system/device, whatever, is going to be the next thing to revolutionize. And you roll it out in crickets. Nobody's like, why are you giving me this? I didn't ask for this. I don't want this. I don't need this. But if you roll that out in a response to, this is the problem of practice I have in my classroom, or this is the dilemma that I'm facing, or boy, if I could just find a way to be more efficient with, maybe it's newsletters, whatever. If you use that story to roll something out, it's going to have bite. It's going to have.
And I think that's one of the things for me as an educator that makes me really passionate about Hapara, and because it was actually designed to meet those needs in practice, and then continuously, hopefully, evolve to continue to meet those needs. But one of the things that I think a lot about is what is the role of IT leadership in establishing and supporting best practices in professional learning. There's, I think, a tension oftentimes, right, between our IT programs and our curriculum and instruction programs. Some of you have found ways of overcoming those. I know there are people in the room who are IT, leaders that do organize professional learning around IT and do feel that they have a responsibility to collaborate with C&I to do that. So I would be really curious to hear your thoughts and also audience members' thoughts about that.
I think I'm spending more time thinking about the PD really systemically. So it's been really important for us to partner with our IT department to identify what sorts of vendor professional development is offered, and to think about both the initial use training, but also the adaptive skills that teachers need in order to be successful with the technology. So one, I would say Allison is like an example of like the bright shining star of a vendor, because she really gets high quality PD. And I would say that it's not always our experience. So the big difference between say like a Hapara PD and brand X would be that the focus around Hapara was on all the things that Allison shared with you on the slide around, really addressing how this tool helps accelerate teaching and learning. So it's approached from a totally different standpoint. So I think partnering with our IT department to make sure, one, that the vendor provided PD is high quality, and if it's really initial use training, making sure that we can really maximize that time, getting it in a variety of formats, a webinar or an online opportunity, so that those folks who are ready to go don't have to come to a full session. And then I would also say, thinking about long term, what are the other skills that a teacher would need in order to be successful? So for us, just using Hapara as an example, we are really working hard on our highly capable program right now to have kids cluster grouped, meaning that we have kids who are not in a self-contained, highly capable program. They're in general education classrooms. We've identified all of them in third grade to be in one third grade class. And so that teacher has really a wide range of students across the continuum of learning in her classroom. And so we've identified Hapara as a tool to help teachers deliver tiered assignments by ability, or in some cases by interest level. So really approaching it from, okay, we're going to teach you about tiered assignments. Hapara is just a tool that helps us to be able to get there. So that's kind of a shift for us.
So thinking about the instructional need first, and then what tool are you going to use? Hapara, sticky notes, dance, to achieve that. Other questions? We have about 2 minutes left. So, any other questions that we can answer?
I know if you look at how much of it is, I do word almost the same thing. It's stretching it into an area that they're not familiar with at a time of year right now. And how much of it is that there's not enough money to pay because when a professional is sitting there, normally they would apply to the.
Yeah, and I like to pay people when I can. They have a tendency to show up when you pay them, or we would be, if you do both, you're a rock star. So resistance as far as bureaucracy, we're so poor when I started that our district office was bare bones. And so there really wasn't bureaucracy, which is, I'm very spoiled. I'll say it, I'm very spoiled. I don't have somebody stopping from doing rapid things. So I'm sorry for folks that have to like argue every single dollar. I'm given a budget and I do it. With my tech committee, we do it, we communicate it, I work with principals the best I can. They move faster with the grassroots than I could ever do with them as a group. Because I don't know how many you met with principals and you tell them, hey, this year we're going to do this, this, and this. And you tell them that like 18 times. And 8 months into the year, they're like, I didn't know that. That's why we're trying to network. So, yeah, I haven't had to.
Formal and sometimes
So obviously a topic that's really interesting. We could go on for a long time, but you're going to have to cut us off because there's another group coming in. But a couple things before you leave. One is you've got some little orange tickets. There's some fish bowls next door. They'll be up at the gold vendor showcase tonight. Hapara is going to be at the gold showcase tonight in G18. And I want to thank you guys for putting together a great show.
Stuck with me.
Sorry.
The only Washington one here.
You know, you gotta have a little chat.
It's fine now.
I think we're that way, you know.
If Trisha asks, do you want to know that we can offer?
Yeah.
I mean, I keep reading. The symptom of disorganization is too many meetings.
Yeah.
I didn't say I was in on that myself.
The subject of it, seriously.
Yes, I sometimes refer to him as my work.